As an elder nearing the twilight of my life, I feel a profound responsibility to share the truth about the events surrounding the Battle of the Little Bighorn, where General Custer met his fate. Time has not diminished the clarity of what I witnessed, and though memories may fade, my account remains rooted in honesty. My spirit will soon join the ancestors, and with this understanding, I will recount only the truth about the campaign. I served as a scout for General Custer alongside my Crow and Arikara brethren, each of us bringing unique knowledge of the land and its dangers. Curly, one of my companions, can attest to the honesty of my words as I recount these events not to seek acclaim, but to preserve the story of what transpired. The scouts accompanying General Custer were from the Crow and Arikara tribes. Mitch Boyer, a man of mixed Sioux heritage, served as the chief scout. Among the Crow scouts were Half Yellow Face, White Swan, Goes Ahead, Hairy Moccasin, Curly, and myself. White Man runs him. On June 24th, our group was camped just below Busby. Hairy Moccasin goes ahead, and I took some of the soldiers' horses and rode to a prominent elevation on the ridge between the Rosebud and the Little Horn Rivers. This spot, often used by the Crow as an observation point during military campaigns, offered a vantage point with a wide view of the surrounding area. There was a concealed hollow in the hill where horses could be hidden from sight. We were familiar with the trail and had some knowledge of the Sioux's movements, but their exact direction remained uncertain. Upon reaching the Crow observation point, the light conditions were poor, making it difficult to see clearly. As a result, we returned to camp and reported our findings. Shortly after sundown, Mitch Boyer and an Army officer, distinguished by his long mustache and prominent nose, left the camp with me to head back toward the lookout point. Since I was familiar with the area, I served as the guide. We followed the Lodge Pole Trail, a well-traveled path leading from the Rosebud to the Little Horn. Around 2 in the morning, we arrived at the lookout. We carefully concealed our horses in a sheltered pocket and lay down to wait for dawn. When daylight broke, we spotted smoke rising from the Sioux camp located in the Little Horn Valley. Across the Little Horn River, we noticed some white horses. Additionally, 2 Sioux could be seen about 1.5 miles to the west, making their way down Davis Creek toward the soldiers' camp. Meanwhile, 6 other Sioux were observed to the northeast, near Tulloch Fork. During the night, the soldiers had advanced and set up camp slightly below us along Davis Creek. The smoke from their breakfast fires was visible from our vantage point. Before long, the soldiers began marching up Davis Creek. Custer halted his troops near our lookout. Around 6 in the morning, I went down to inform him about the smoke we had seen rising from the Sioux camp. Custer ascended the hill to get a view of the valley. When he laid eyes on the Sioux village, he remarked, "These people are a nuisance to the Crows and the white settlers. Today, I intend to deal with them. I will defeat them and establish a fort where the Little Horn meets the Bighorn. After that, you Crows can live in peace." He confidently declared that he would put an end to the Sioux issue. However, we scouts were uneasy. The number of Indians seemed overwhelming, with camps stretching out in multiple directions. One particularly large camp formed a circle near the western hills. I estimated there were between 4,000 and 5,000 warriors, possibly more. This was the largest Indian camp I had ever encountered. If the 2 Sioux scouts hadn't spotted us earlier that morning, I might have suggested that Custer keep his men hidden throughout the day and launch a surprise attack at night. However, with the scouts aware of our presence, such a strategy seemed futile. As one of the senior scouts, I often led the advanced scouting, relying on my extensive knowledge of the terrain. I advised Custer to proceed down Ash Creek, also known as Reno Creek, and suggested waiting near the divide before descending into the Little Horn Valley. Following my recommendation, Custer advanced with his soldiers moving briskly at a trot along Ash Creek. The soldiers' horses, being larger than our ponies, forced us to gallop frequently just to maintain pace. Custer followed the Lodgepole Trail, which traced the North Fork of Upper Ash Creek. This route connected the Rosebud to Davis Creek, cutting through a pass and leading into the North Fork of Upper Ash Creek before descending along Ash Creek to the Little Bighorn River. The trail was relatively smooth, making it suitable for their swift advance. Approximately 9 miles along the upper fork of Ash Creek, we discovered a lodge containing the body of a deceased Native American. It appeared that he might have succumbed to injuries sustained during the engagement with General Crook at Rosebud on June 17th. Custer halted his forces on a small flat, roughly 1¼ miles from the mouth of Ash Creek. He instructed Major Reno to maneuver to the left, cross the Little Bighorn River, and launch an assault on the northern end of the Sioux village. Observing a cloud of dust near the creek's mouth, Custer called for Half Yellow Face, the Crow leader, and asked about its origin. Half Yellow Face speculated, "It looks like the Sioux are fleeing." However, Custer responded, "I'll send my left wing southward in case the Sioux head in that direction." Following this, Reno advanced and crossed the creek just below the flat. Custer then summoned White Swan and instructed him, along with Half Yellow Face, to move towards the ridge and observe the activities within the Sioux encampment. Although the pair set off, they diverted from their orders, choosing to follow Reno instead. This was the last sighting of them until the situation had unfolded. Afterward, Custer began moving towards the ridge. Mitch Boyer, the chief of scouts, noticed that the 2 scouts sent by Custer had followed Reno. He then gathered Curly, Goes Ahead, Harry Moccasin, and me, saying, "Let's head to the ridge ourselves and survey the lodges." Upon reaching the ridge, we saw that the lodges were situated further down the river in the valley. Advancing ahead, we were followed by Custer. By this point, it was approximately 9 in the morning. Custer moved at a measured pace, frequently pausing before proceeding. He did not depart from this location until Reno had begun his engagement. Before Reno left Custer's position on the flat, another detachment of soldiers was dispatched to the left. Being significantly ahead, I was unable to determine their destination. Custer and his brother veered to our right and paused on a small hill, while the troops advanced below them. When Custer reached the hilltop, he turned, waved his hat, and was met with cheers and hat waves from the soldiers below. Custer then resumed his journey up the ridge, followed closely by his men. Their pace quickened, compelling the scouts to occasionally push their ponies into a gallop to keep up. At a specific location along the ridge, the group turned right and descended a coulee heading northward. The scouts positioned themselves atop the elevated bluffs, providing a vantage point to observe the Sioux camp below. As we moved along the ridge, Custer descended Medicine Tail Creek and advanced toward the river. At that moment, the Sioux spotted him and surged in his direction. Their numbers were overwhelming, with thousands of them converging. Custer attempted to ford the river near the mouth of Medicine Tail Creek, but failed to succeed. This was the last sighting we had of Custer. Mitch Boyer addressed us, saying, "You scouts have fulfilled your role by guiding Custer here. Your work is done, and you should return to the pack train while the soldiers handle the fighting." Declaring his intention to join Custer, Boyer spurred his horse and rode off. That was the final time we saw Mitch Boyer, as he perished alongside Custer on the ridge. The scouts then retraced their path along the ridge, eventually reaching the position where Reno's men were entrenched. The group remained there for the remainder of the afternoon. The heat was oppressive, and the soldiers were deprived of water. When their thirst became unbearable, a few volunteered to venture down to the river and fill canteens. Tragically, many lost their lives in the effort to retrieve water. After sunset that evening, I made my way through the Indian encampment, heading toward the north. By dawn the next day, I had reached the area where the Little Bighorn River joins the Bighorn River. There, I encountered a group of soldiers under the command of an officer whom the Indians referred to as Man Without Hip or Lame Hip, General Terry, along with another officer known among the Indians as White Whiskers, General Gibbon. I shared everything I knew about the battle with them and explained that my clothing was in tatters. Without proper footwear, as I had no moccasins, I informed them of my intention to return home. The officers agreed, and I continued on my journey. Eventually, I arrived at Pryor, where the Crow people had set up their camp. However, as I entered, some of the Crow mistook me for a Sioux and began firing at me. I have often heard claims that Curly was the sole survivor of this battle, but in truth, Curly did not participate in the fight. Around the time Reno launched his attack on the village, Curly, along with some Arikara scouts, drove off a large group of Sioux ponies and fled with them. According to several Arikaras I later encountered, Curly traveled with them as far as the point where the Rosebud River meets the Yellowstone River, known as the Junction. I did not cross paths with Curly again until the following autumn, when I found him in a mountain crow camp near the Yellowstone. Therefore, it is clear that Curly witnessed very little of the battle. I cannot recall every single detail of the fight due to the sheer number of events unfolding that day and the overwhelming excitement that made it difficult to retain minor particulars. However, I have attempted to provide a general overview of the campaign, focusing only on the incidents I personally witnessed. I remember Custer vividly. The Indians referred to him as the Son of the Morning Star. He had long yellow hair and, during the battle, wore an outfit made entirely of buckskin. If not for Mitch Boyer, who sent us back, both Harry Moccasin and Goes Ahead, as well as myself, would now lie buried on that ridge alongside Custer and his men. What I have shared is the truth as I know it, without seeking to claim any credit for myself. Even Curly, who was present with us, cannot dispute the accuracy of my account. The Battle of the Little Bighorn remains etched in my memory as a series of decisions, actions, and consequences that shaped history. While many lives were lost, including that of General Custer and Mitch Boyer, I take solace in having fulfilled my role as a guide and witness to these events. As my journey nears its end, I leave this account as a testament to the bravery, struggles, and truths of all who played a part in that momentous chapter. The spirits of those who perished endure, and through these words I honor their story for future generations to understand.